Maybe that wouldn't be a goal I could achieve. Far from full-length novels, each story is so vastly different.
You are in for a treat this week. My interview guest this week is author Melissa Allgood about her upcoming Halloween release, Everyone's Dead, More Tales from a Morbid Author. It is a wonderful short story collection of horror of all kinds, everyone within this lovely little collection, which is one of Melissa's many titles. Have a snack, enjoy this interview, and if you're interested in Everyone's Dead, you should go pre-order it. Support another indie author. A spooky little Halloween treat. Subscribing or leaving a comment, tell me what you thought. Let's get to the interview.
Hello, I am Lila Mary, and today I am honored to have the author Melissa Allgood as my interviewee. I am interviewing her for her new book, Everyone's Dead, Tales from a Morbid Author. I read and absolutely adored. So, hello, Melissa.
Hello, Lila. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. If you could please give us a short summary of Everyone's Dead in your own words.
So it is a collection of short fiction, and at the end of each short story, either someone's dead physically or death is mentioned, and that is kind of the through line throughout it. It's not all grisly and gory, although there is some of that in there. But yeah, just by the end of it, as an author, I fictitiously kill someone.
I think every author does, yeah. That's great. The versatility and virtue of this book comes from its wide variety of different stories, because it is an anthology, like you said. What would you say is the through line or common theme in all of them?
I would say, I mean, it is hard to have a through line because, like you said, each story is so vastly different. My mind goes a lot of crazy places, and I try not to question it too much. But just the concept of death is either, shown on the page, or a character is grappling with death, or a character is already dead, or even I have one of the pieces at the end is called Blanquita, and it is about an interracial couple discussing the differences of how society treats them and how even they might be treated in their death. So that's really what I would consider the through line, just the ending of life. It's something that we can all, we all will deal with at one point, and just kind of the unknown of that really interests me as well.
That's a really great through line because it is a universal experience, and you can come at it in so many different ways from a writer's perspective. Are there any stories that got cut from this anthology? Any stories you didn't get to tell?
No, actually, this was something I'd kind of thought of over the years. I had written a first collection called Everyone Dies, and it was, I think, 2 Thanksgivings ago, my uncle was like, oh, you should come out with another one. Have you thought of a title? And I said, Everyone's Dead, of course. Some of the stories I'd written years ago, Velvet Bag, I think is the oldest story. The Hum is also an older story, but I kind of gave it a facelift. The 2 newest stories were Weapon of Choice and Bad Dog. Those were the 2 newest things I wrote. Actually, I think Fuck You, Mark was pretty new too. That was actually, I found out that Meta had pirated one of my stories. So that was my answer to Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah. Never cross the writer, because you will receive some retribution in their work. Exactly.
My favorite story from this collection was the last one, involving a woman, her husband, and their new puppy. I'm sure readers will have a variety of opinions on which one is their favorite. But do you have a favorite story from this anthology?
Well, I'm sure as an author, it's very difficult to pick favorites. We'll say Bad Dog was inspired by a friend of mine. Her dog, predilection towards getting knives out of the kitchen, and she was a little concerned. So that's what inspired that particular story. So I'm glad to hear that you liked it. For me, again, it's hard to pick a favorite. I will say the story Dinner for Two was the easiest to write. It just kind of came to me. I knew what it was. I didn't need to grapple with it. I didn't need to get it peer revised. I was like, this is it. This is the story as it exists. So Dinner for Two. Also, my husband really loves to cook, and I really love to eat. So, when you read that story, you might see that kind of perspective as well. But yeah, Dinner for Two is the easiest to write. But they're all very near and dear to me, and they all have like a special place.
As an author, there are some stories that really do just click, that just come to you. It's effortless to write them, and that's just such a wonderful feeling.
I was going to say, if only it happened more. If only it was always that easy.
Yeah. I know, yeah. It's always the stories that just come to you out of nowhere that are the easiest, versus the stories that you put so much work into planning never turn out as well, at least in my experience.
Definitely agree.
There are a few stories taken from longer works within this anthology. Do you want to expand any of these stories into a full novel in the future?
So all of the excerpts are from full-length novels that have all already been published. I just do have, not only is the collection very diverse, but I also have a diverse collection of novels. I've written a romantic thriller series. I've written a young adult novel. I've written a sci-fi series. I actually just put out the third book not too long ago in that series. The only one that has yet to be completed, and it's my work in progress, is there's a story called The Premonition. And then it's about a teenage girl that has a premonition of a mass shooting at prom. And that's been a book that I've grappled with on and off, because I'm sure, as you know, as an author, like, you have to also think about marketing it. And I was like, how am I going to market a book about a girl that has a premonition of a school shooting and get people to read it? But it's also the book that just it's haunted me for years, and I just have to write it. And even if no one reads it, I mean, it just has to be written. So all of them do exist out there in the world. If people wanted to read more into that storyline, it is available. But if they're like, hey, that was good, just to read that one little short story, then they can move on with their lives as well.
Yeah, I love that you give your readers that option. I've been sitting with these stories so long, but new readers about to enter this world. Which of the stories are you most excited for readers to experience for the first time?
The story We Didn't Start the Fire is really about parasocial relationships. And I also think it reflects, even though it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek story in my eyes, I hope that people, when they read it, maybe they think about how they're living their lives a little bit. And there are several stories in there that I am trying to send a message, but it is ultimately up to the reader. And I mean, art is interpreted so many different ways. I can only hope that they get the message that I'm sending to them, that there is some reality behind what I'm writing. For instance, The Knife or Key Lime Pie or even The Concrete Room, those might be like, oh my gosh, it's so scary and I love it. But it's also like there is some reality behind that as well. But We Didn't Start the Fire, I think it's kind of funny. So I hope that, if they don't get, because sometimes when people read my stories, they're just like, oh, it's scary or it's sad. So I thought maybe if I added a little humor, they might kind of understand what I was trying to say. And I can only hope that they do. But if they don't, I just hope that they enjoy the ride.
There's definitely a story for everyone in this book, for people who love more of a slasher story, people who love suspenseful horror, people who love humor in their horror. So that's really great variety. In your minds, do all these stories take place within the same universe?
No, for me, they're all very in their own world. I mean, literally. I don't really see them connected at all. For me, that's kind of the great thing about writing short fiction, is that you just kind of have an idea, you work it out, and I try not to push it too much. So even though sometimes I've had, especially with my first collection, there's a short story I wrote called The End, which is about this boy growing up in the apocalypse. And I've had several people be like, oh my gosh, you should write a book like that. And I've honestly tried, and I even tried to write a short story in this collection, which would be like a companion, but it never really worked. It always seemed like the story was done, the characters were done. I mean, I'll never say never, maybe they'll be reprised somewhere else, but they were kind of just, this was their life and this was their character arc, and so be it. Yeah,
I've experienced that too in my own writing. Some stories are just meant to be their own thing.
Yeah.
Do you have plans for any of these stories to cross over and interact with each other in the future?
I mean, like I said, never say never. I don't try to force myself to write anything, but there are some themes I'm sure I'll get back to again. I had never really talked about it when the story We Didn't Start the Fire. I'd never really thought to bring in relationships with celebrities, or again, parasocial relationships, or obsession with social media and people in that way. So that is a concept I definitely am going to be revisiting. It won't be with those characters maybe, but it definitely is something that I kind of want to delve into more, that I honestly hadn't even thought of. I love watching Black Mirror, but for some reason I never thought maybe I could create something like that. So it is an interesting new concept to kind of dwell on.
For sure. There's definitely a Black Mirror vibe in some of these stories, which I love that. You explore a variety of point of view characters within this collection. Villains, heroes, bystanders, men, women, and more. Did you have a favorite perspective to write from?
Generally, and maybe this is true for you, the story just kind of comes to me and I just kind of write it down like I see a movie in my head. I kind of do like writing from the villain's perspective, just because so many different types of villains. There are serial killers, there are just abusive men, mothers that maybe aren't taking good care of their kids. Then there are also villains that are seen in society, like maybe a woman that has premarital sex or whatever. So a villain can mean a lot of different things. So for me, I think that writing from the villain's perspective is pretty interesting. I do, in a general sense, like them to get their comeuppance. That doesn't always happen. And again, I try not to force the narrative in a certain way. I try to let it go. So although I really would prefer if all my villains died a very horrible death that they deserved, sometimes they do get away with it, unfortunately.
I also like writing from a villain's perspective. It's delving into that world more because it's not explored as often in fiction. And there is just so much room to play because there are so many different definitions of a villain. And I think the best villains are the ones that do not consider themselves villains. So
exactly.
It was really interesting to read in this anthology. Will there be another edition of horror stories like these from you?
So I'm actually currently in the editing process of another collection that's actually going to be for a young adult audience. Is what I told a friend about it, and she said, so it's like Melissa Allgood light. So it is going to be appropriate for readers 15 and above. It is going to be called Death by 21 Midnight. I don't know if you're a Taylor Swift fan, but it is my interpretation of her album Midnights. And with each track, I have a horror story that goes along with it. Much like this current collection, it really runs the gamut. So I do have post-apocalyptic, I do have a poem in there, slasher, I do have vigilante, imagine that. We find out what happens on April 29th. So it's Swiftie coded, but also it is very much me and my interpretation of her album in a short story anthology. So yeah, I am hoping to have that out by December 13th of 2025. As I think I'd mentioned to you, I'm moving currently. I'm starting a new job in the next few weeks. If not, then we'll see. But I'm hoping that all the stars will align and I'll have another collection out this year that readers, as young as 15 can enjoy.
Cool. I've rarely heard of a story collection being themed around an album. That is just such a unique and lovely idea, and I'm looking forward to it. That sounds great. What do you hope readers take away from this collection? Are there any themes, messages, morals, or it's just simple evil delight that you want them to remember?
There are definitely a few that I hope they just enjoy for evil delight. And again, I hope that they do find humor in them. Maybe you also feel this too, but it's kind of like once it's published, it's up for the reader's interpretation. I do want to say, for the record, I hope that no one ever takes my work and wants to enact it or anything like that. That is definitely not my intention. I do hope they get a little bit of everything. And I feel that they are able to do that with an anthology like this. You can find hope at the end, or you can just find sheer terror, or you can maybe even be empowered to be like, wow, I read this story, and even though it is fictitious, this is still something real that really happens. For me, honestly, like the concrete room and the knife and key lime pie, I've mentioned those before, but those three stories are something that are real and really happened. I just wrote a story about it. I fictionalized it. So I do hope that readers might think, maybe what could they do? Or if all they want to do is simply read it and enjoy it, and then hand it off to a friend. The best any author can hope for, that someone reads the book, to be honest. Yeah.
Like you said, there's so much variety. There's so many different emotional reactions for a reader to have to this collection. That's really great. Is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't covered here?
I don't bring this up a lot, but whenever I do, people seem to react very well to it. But I am dyslexic, and I'm pretty severely dyslexic. Thank goodness I had good tutoring at around 9 or 10. I had always wanted to be an author. I'd always wanted to write stories. It kind of felt, since I had dyslexia, that maybe that wouldn't be a goal I could achieve. Everyone's Dead, this is going to be the 11th title that I've published. So I think that if you put your mind to it, you can do anything. But yeah, just basically don't sell yourself short on your dreams. You could really dream up anything and make it a reality. It is possible. And even though I do write scary stories, and for my outward appearance, people might not. Even last night, I met up with a couple of author friends, and one of them, their son was there, and he said, oh, you must write stuff like The Notebook, when he saw me. And one of my other author friends is like, no, she writes like the most grisly murders you'll ever read. That is also, don't judge a book by its cover, but also make sure the covers. Be yourself. Dream big dreams, reaching out to community, reaching out to other. And I've honestly even learned a lot from you by looking at your TikTok. I do have a cover artist, but the idea that you make your covers with Canva, and I was like, man, that's actually a pretty good idea. And you don't have to use AI. You can still create it all by yourself. And then it's entirely yours, which is something really quite beautiful that not everyone can accomplish. So
yeah, thank you. I am firmly a believer that we should keep AI out of the publishing industry. We do not want it here. Pay the artists, pay the people who make these things, make sure they are still in business and still have a job. Yeah, that's
exactly. Yeah,
for sure. Encouraging message that someone with dyslexia could become such a successful published author. That's wonderful. I'll always stand behind the message that authors should write whatever they want without thinking of how it's going to perform or what they're going to be judged for. You know, in the editing stages, maybe you can edit a little more to market if you are concerned about sales and stuff like that. But in the drafting phase, authors should just write what they want. They should make it weird. They should make it funny. They should not censor themselves, because that is just the death of creativity.
Exactly. And oftentimes the times where I've gone more off the rails, people seem to connect more with that. You know, the times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm scared. And also, to be frank, I don't know if you feel this way, but for me, I feel like writing is almost so selfish. I do it because it's a compulsion almost. And it's really just like, ha ha ha, you know, I get to live in these worlds and really fully embrace these worlds, just like reading books. I think that that's almost a very selfish thing to do, because you get to explore all these different worlds, and not everyone might find that interesting, but you get to travel all sorts of worlds and be all sorts of different people. And, you know, what a wonderful thing that is.
Absolutely. Authors have so much power. We just live in a sandbox where we can create worlds from nothing. I think sometimes we don't realize how remarkable that is, because it's so normal to us. That's just how our brains always have worked. But there's a lot of people that can't do that. So I agree that readers, I think, can tell when you've written a story from the heart that just like had to be told. It had to come out of you. And readers can really tell, like, if you write something a little bit unhinged or funny or out of the norm, they do tend to connect with that more. And I think they can just tell when a story is really authentic. 100%, I believe that. So people, where they can find you online and where they can pre-order Everyone's Dead.
So you can find me online at melissaallgood.com. That's my website. And at the bottom of the page, you can message me if you want to send me if you want me to sign a book for you directly. I am in the Houston area, and I do a lot of events in South Texas, so you could always meet me there. Now, I am 40, so I spend most of my time on Instagram. So if you want to get with me there, it's Mel Allgood Author. I am on TikTok, but to be frank, that's mostly just to look at Love Island content and also meet up with other authors. That's been the joy for me, is book talk, honestly. Bookshop.org. I really am a big proponent for them. You can get my books there. And also, they donate, for every purchase you make, they donate to an independent bookstore of your choice, or they'll just donate to independent bookstores, period. So Barnes & Noble. Of course, you can find me on Amazon. And also your local library. Please go and request it from your local library. Support libraries. I think that libraries are awesome. Although I would love it if I could become, richer than Stephen King and everyone pay for my book. I want readers to be able to experience these worlds, so you can always request it at your local library. But bookshop.org and melissaallgood.com.
Yeah, I also love bookshop.org. They're such a wonderful place. My books are there as well. I really feel you. I only use TikTok for business, for marketing, for connecting with other authors. I never use it socially. I'm also an Instagram girly, so I feel that.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I get so many messages on TikTok, and I'm usually a little nervous to, obviously we started corresponding through there because I saw your video. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot more people trying to sell me things or offer to be my sugar daddy. And I'm like, no, I'm just here to meet other authors. I know what's happening on reality TV, because I love to read, but sometimes I just like a reality TV show. Yeah.
You need both. You need the brain off and then the brain on, like critical thinking.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. Everyone who is watching, please go pre-order Everyone's Dead. Pre-orders are so powerful. People that don't know, pre-orders are what I like to call the backbone of release day. It's better than if you order the book on release day, in my opinion, because it just bumps up sales and ratings and all the behind the scenes stuff. If you read the book, go leave a review. Reviews are also just as important. Thank you, Melissa, for being here today. I'm wishing you all the success on release day, and that Everyone's Dead finds the readers that it was meant for.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I hope to give everyone a very scary Halloween.
Editing Lila here, just realized I forgot to record an outro, so thank you so much for watching the interview again. Check out the links in the description, and I will see you next week for another video.